My father leaving us, that means secure. For life, perhaps. There's so many images that will never go away.
For decades, the world believed Audrey Hepburn lived a life as flawless as the pearls around her neck, a life of glamour, romance, and effortless grace. But the truth her own son finally confirmed, is far darker, far heavier, and far more human than anyone ever imagined. Because behind that perfect smile was a lifetime of hunger, heartbreak, abandonment, and a quiet pain she hid so well that even her closest fans never saw the cracks forming beneath the surface. And when her son finally spoke openly about what his mother carried, it changed everything we thought we knew about Audrey Hepburn. Before we reveal the secrets Audrey kept buried for decades and the emotional confessions her son finally shared, make sure you're subscribed to RetroWaves. Here, we bring you the real stories behind the icons, the heartbreak, the humanity, and the hidden truths the world never got to see. Now, let's step into the real world of Audrey Hepburn. Not the legend, not the Hollywood angel, but the woman who spent her entire life trying to heal from the wounds she never chose. Audrey Hepburn was adored everywhere she went, on the screen, on the stage, and in the hearts of millions. But according to her son, behind her gentleness lived a wound she carried from childhood until her final breath. It started when she was 6 years old. Her father, Joseph Rustin, stood up, walked away, and never came back. Audrey later called it one of the greatest traumas of her entire life. But her son Shawn said something even more heartbreaking. She never got over it. Not even at the end. Imagine that. The world saw an icon of poise, but the little girl inside her never stopped waiting for a father who had already left. Years later, Audrey tracked him down in Ireland. She faced him, she sat with him, and yet they never spoke about why he left. Her son said she carried that silence like a shadow, a longing she never could shake, a question that would follow her through every relationship she ever had. And this was only the beginning of her pain. Many admired Audrey Hepburn for her slender figure, her soft lines, her almost delicate presence, but her son confirmed what many never dared to imagine. She looked that way because she survived starvation as a child. During World War II, Audrey lived in the Netherlands under Nazi occupation. Food disappeared, winter froze the streets, and the famine grew so severe that Audrey ate anything. Tulip bulbs, leaves, nettles, whatever kept her alive. By the end of the war, she weighed only 88 pounds, despite being almost 5'6". Her son Luca said it plainly. She came very close to death. The world called her thin, the world called her elegant, but Audrey knew the truth behind her own silhouette. It was the outline of a child who had starved and lived to remember it. The malnutrition followed her for years. Anemia, weakness, health problems that she endured quietly, always choosing grace over complaint. And this is where her son revealed something that stunned many. Audrey Hepburn wasn't inspired to work with UNICEF because she was Hollywood royalty. She was inspired because she remembered hunger, the kind that never truly leaves you. Before Audrey Hepburn wore a tiara, before she stood outside Tiffany's with a croissant, before she ever became cinema's eternal darling, she wanted to be a ballerina, not a star, not an icon, a dancer. She trained through war. She danced secretly to raise money for the Dutch resistance. Her passion burned in silence. But when she finally reached London, reality struck harder than any spotlight. Her teachers said she would never become a prima ballerina, not because she lacked heart, but because the starvation of the war had damaged her strength forever. She was too tall, her feet too big, her technique permanently stunted by years without nourishment. Her son said this was one of her earliest heartbreaks, a dream she carried quietly, long after the applause of Hollywood drowned it out. But this loss led her to another stage, and soon Hollywood would discover the woman who moved like poetry. Still, none of that erased the pain underneath. She is still one of the most photographed women of all time. Her eyes, her brows, her silhouette, her softness. Yet her son revealed something the world never expected. Audrey Hepburn didn't think she was beautiful. She saw a big nose, big feet, a body shaped not by fashion, but by famine. She said she was too skinny, too angular, too imperfect. But with age, something changed. Her son said she welcomed her wrinkles, she welcomed her gray hair, she embraced time, not as an enemy, but as a gift. Aging, she once said, is a privilege. But for Audrey, aging also meant one thing she valued more than anything: more time with the family she never truly had as a child. And yet, Love would be one of the hardest battles of her life, because the little girl abandoned at 6 never stopped looking for the stability she lost, and what she found in adulthood was not the fairy tale the world imagined. Audrey Hepburn loved deeply, but the men she chose, that part of her story, is where the heartbreak finally begins to show, in ways the world was never meant to see. Audrey Hepburn grew up searching for the stability she never felt as a child, and that search would define the most painful chapters of her personal life. Love for Audrey was never simple. It was something she clung to with hope, and something that slipped through her fingers more than once. Because while the world saw a woman who had everything behind closed doors, she endured heartbreaks that left scars even her elegant smile couldn't hide. In 1952, Audrey Hepburn fell in love for the first time with James Hansen, a handsome British industrialist who seemed to offer the stability she longed for. She called it love at first sight. He was charming, successful, grounded, everything her father had not been. The engagement made headlines, Hollywood's new starlet finally finding her fairy tale. But while the world prepared for a glamorous wedding, Audrey faced a truth she could not ignore. Their lives were pulling them in opposite directions. Her career was exploding, she was constantly traveling, and Hansen's schedule was just as demanding. The young girl who once cried for the father who walked away refused to create a marriage built on absence, and so she broke the engagement, telling the world and him, "When I get married, I want to be really married." It was a promise to herself, a vow to only commit to a love that felt solid, safe, and lasting. Yet fate had a different plan. Shortly after, Audrey met actor Mel Ferrer at a party hosted by Gregory Peck. He was older, experienced, enigmatic, and Audrey, searching for guidance and stability, was drawn to him immediately. Their connection was intense. They married in 1954. Hollywood celebrated them as a perfect artistic pair, the rising star and the seasoned actor-director who would guide her career. But those closest to Audrey saw something darker. Rumors began circulating that Mel controlled every part of her life, from the roles she accepted to the clothes she wore to the people she could trust. Some whispered he treated her like a project, not a partner. Others said he envied her success, that her rising fame made him feel small beside her. Audrey rarely defended herself, but she defended him. She denied the rumors. She minimized the tension. She protected the man she loved, even as the emotional cost grew heavier each year. Her son Shawn would later share that his mother often prioritized harmony over confrontation, a habit born from childhood, when speaking up or questioning love had only led to loss. The marriage brought Audrey her first son Shawn in 1960, a moment of pure joy after multiple heartbreaking miscarriages that devastated her privately. But motherhood couldn't save the marriage. By 1968, after 14 painful years, Audrey walked away. Her heart had been chipped at over and over again, and yet she still believed in love. She still believed she could find the stability she longed for. If only she knew, the next chapter would test her in ways even she wasn't prepared for. After divorcing Mel, Audrey needed air, and she found it on a Mediterranean cruise with friends. There she met Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti. Handsome, mature, warm. He represented everything she had spent her life chasing: a stable family, a fresh start, a quiet life away from Hollywood's glare. They married in 1969. For a moment, Audrey believed she had finally found her forever. She moved to Rome. She stepped back from acting. She dreamed of giving her son Shawn a peaceful childhood and of expanding her family. But fate dealt her another blow. Her pregnancies were difficult. Her miscarriages became traumatic events she rarely spoke about, but her son later revealed the pain cut deeper than almost anything in her life. Yet finally, in 1970, she gave birth to her second son, Luca, a miracle she cherished with her whole soul. Audrey loved being a mother more than she loved being a star. She cooked, she gardened, she walked her children to school, she chose ordinary moments over applause. But while Audrey built a home, Andrea built secrets. Stories began circulating about his infidelity. Younger women, nights out, affairs whispered through Rome's social circles. And Audrey, already fragile from the losses of her miscarriages, found herself shrinking again, living in emotional shadows she had once promised herself she'd never return to. Her son later revealed that Dotti rarely made the effort to see Luca after the marriage crumbled, leaving Audrey to shoulder the responsibilities of mother and protector alone. In 1982, she ended the marriage, quietly, gracefully, without scandal. But inside, she was tired. tired of searching for love that always slipped away, tired of building homes that others walked out of, tired of healing wounds she never created. And yet, her story didn't end in heartbreak, because in the final act of her life, something unexpected happened. She met a man who didn't want to shape her, control her, or complete her. He simply wanted to love her. And for Audrey Hepburn, that was enough to change everything she thought she knew about happiness. It was in this late chapter, after 2 broken marriages, years of loneliness, and a lifetime of emotional scars, that Audrey finally experienced the peace she had searched for since childhood. But just as she stepped into this last happy decade, something else began to take shape inside her, something she never saw coming, something even her son struggled to speak about without emotion, and something that would pull her life into a final, unexpected direction. For most of her life, Audrey Hepburn carried wounds that never fully healed. But in 1980, she met someone who helped quiet the echoes of her past, someone who didn't treat her like a star or a symbol or an ideal. His name was Robert Wolders, a Dutch actor and widower of Merle Oberon, and from the moment they met, Audrey felt something she had never truly known before: peace. Not the fragile kind she tried to build in her marriages, not the imagined safety she chased as a young woman, but a calm, steady companionship that wrapped around her like a warm blanket after a lifetime of cold. Audrey once said the years she shared with Robert were the happiest of my life. There were no roles to play, no expectations to live up to, no pressure to be perfect, just love. Simple, quiet, real. Her son saw it too. Shawn said Robert allowed his mother to simply be the girl who survived war, the woman who carried heartbreak, the mother who lived for her children. With him, all the masks fell away. But even in this chapter of serenity, something was quietly growing inside Audrey. A shadow, a danger, a disease so rare that even doctors struggled to recognize it, and by the time they finally did, it had already taken root. In late 1992, Audrey returned from a humanitarian mission in Somalia, a trip that left her shaken by the suffering she witnessed, but soon after, she began experiencing severe abdominal pain, pain that didn't fade, pain that grew sharper each day. She sought answers in Switzerland. No doctor could explain what was wrong, so she flew to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. After days of tests, the truth came crashing down. Audrey was diagnosed with a rare form of abdominal cancer, pseudomyxoma peritoni. It had been growing silently for years. She underwent surgery. She began treatment, but the cancer was already far too advanced. Robert Wolders later revealed the most heartbreaking part. Audrey wasn't afraid of dying. She was only afraid of suffering. And even in her fragility, she never stopped thinking about others, especially the children, whose hunger and pain she understood better than anyone. Her humanitarian work had become her final mission, her way of transforming her own childhood trauma into something meaningful, something lasting. But time was no longer on her side. Audrey wanted one last thing, one final wish before the end. She wanted to go home. Traveling commercially was impossible. Her body was too weak, the pain too severe. So her dear friend Hubert de Givenchy, the man who designed her most iconic dresses and cherished her like family, arranged a private jet filled with flowers to fly her home to Switzerland. When Audrey stepped aboard, the cabin wasn't just a plane. It was a garden. White roses, lily of the valley, her favorites, surrounding her like a gentle embrace. She arrived in Tolokonaz just in time for Christmas, surrounded by her sons, by Robert, by friends who loved her beyond the screen and the legend. Audrey said something that still brings chills to those who remember it. "This is the most beautiful Christmas I've ever had." Snow fell softly outside, candles glowed in the windows, laughter filled the rooms of her little home, and for a moment, just a moment, the girl who had endured famine and fear, the woman who had survived heartbreak and loss, was finally wrapped in pure peace. But peace has its own way of whispering goodbye. As January approached, Audrey became too weak to walk outside. She spent her days in bed, sometimes taking slow steps into the garden when sunlight touched the path just right. On January 20, 1993, Audrey Hepburn drifted into sleep and slipped away quietly, with Robert holding her hand. She was 63. Her funeral was small, intimate, filled with people who loved her for who she truly was, not the legend, not the icon, but the woman. Gregory Peck stood before the mourners and read a poem called Unending Love. His voice trembled, many wept, flowers arrived from all over the world. Elizabeth Taylor, the Dutch royal family, strangers whose lives she had touched without ever meeting them. Even then, Audrey's light reached farther than she ever believed it could. But years after her passing, her son revealed something that made the world see her in an entirely new way. Shawn Ferrer speaks of his mother with a tenderness that can only come from deep understanding and deep loss. He confirmed that Audrey's life was not built on glamour or perfection or effortless charm. It was built on resilience, on survival, on a childhood of hunger and war, on the pain of a father who abandoned her, on miscarriages that shattered her heart, on relationships that bruised her spirit, on battles she fought silently, always with grace. He said, "She was the girl from across the landing who put on a little black dress, a wonderful package of imperfections, and that is what the world never truly understood until her own son finally confirmed it." Audrey Hepburn wasn't extraordinary because she was perfect. She was extraordinary because she remained gentle in a world that had not always been gentle with her. She gave love in places where she once found pain. She healed others while carrying wounds no one saw. And she lived a life guided not by glamour, but by empathy. That, Shawn says, is her real legacy. If Audrey Hepburn's story moved you, if her strength, her humanity, and her quiet courage touched something in your heart, make sure to subscribe to RetroWaves. Here we bring you the real stories behind the icons, not the legends the world imagines, but the human beings who lived, loved, suffered, and inspired generations. More stories await.